I was freaking out when we were in the bus, heads
Yep.
down, between our lap,
Yep.
and the drill started coming in screaming at us because I didn't know you were supposed to say yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And the drill instructor saw that, so they came and grabbed me.
All right. Today we have Tim Bonner, the creator of Stronghold Father, with us today. Tim, it's really great to talk to you. I really appreciate you making time for this, and welcome on.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. The reason why we originally met, and then we'll hit on that a little bit later, but I did want to talk about at some point about your incident with your injury at boot camp and that story. That's originally how I found you, was through that story. And honestly, like, the thing that hit me about that one is that I know I've had friends, whether it was in boot camp and people I met in the Marine Corps that had injuries and unfortunately didn't get to complete boot camp. And so when I saw your story about the injury you had, and it's devastating, especially as an 18, 19-year-old going into boot camp. Like, you're just growing into being an adult. You're trying to figure out who you are. And so to have an injury, this is a big stepping stone to go to and try out, see what you're made of, is to go to boot camp. And that was my drive for why I wanted to become a Marine. It's like, I want to see what I'm made of. And so I remember that being a fear of mine, is what am I going to do if I get hurt? What am I going to do if I don't make it? And so when I saw your story of how you persevered, how you did that, you did the thing that a lot of people are terrified of. And I've heard other stories where people don't recover from something like that. Like, that's what really, I was like, I got to talk to you, man. Like, I got to figure out what it is that you have in here and in here, because you have to be pretty resilient to attempt something and be like, you know what, I did my best, and I figured something else out. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that going forward. But I just want to know what makes the man. And so for you, you grew up in Guatemala, right? Or you were born in Guatemala, is that right?
I was born in Guatemala. The first 5 years of my life, my brothers and I spent in poverty. We had to go dig for food in the dumps. And that's where my mom actually died, was in the dumps. So so we were there for my first 5 years, and then we had a family come out from the US to Guatemala to adopt all of us, which is pretty crazy.
How does that happen? Is that a regular thing? Is it just like out of the blue? Was this just a rare occurrence?
I think it was just all aligned for us. I think that, because of the childhood upbringing, we were just in a bad environment with our dad, and my dad being alcoholic. It's just, I think God had bigger plans for us, and it was time for us to be removed from that situation, from that environment, because I don't know. That's one thing that I still don't understand, why it was us that came to the US, but that's how it landed,
Right. And that's, I do want to know too, was it you said your mom, you mentioned earlier when we were talking, was your mom worked for the missionary, is that right?
Yeah, my mom was a school cook, and that missionary came to Guatemala from the US and helped build a school out there called Mi Refugio, which she had helped bring kids out of the dumps into the school system so that they could get meals for the day and just somewhere to stay that's safe.
That's so your mom, how did your mom get that role?
That part I don't know, but we were near the dumps. So I was too young to know that connection, but my mom ended up being there, and they built a friendship from that point.
I got you. Can you describe what it was like? You say the dumps. What is it like there?
So it's crazy because there's a whole documentary online on YouTube that has my story in there, but there are people that go out there scavenging for food because they're poor. So we were like a walking distance from there, and that's where the trucks come in and dumping all the trash out there. Just a lot of just dead stuff out there, birds just flying around the air. It's just a bad environment out there.
And what are the like living standards like over there? Was it like you guys have showers? You guys, how does that?
From what I remember, we did have like a studio house,
Okay,
but there are a lot of people out there that lived in sheds and tents and
right.
lived in the trash. But thankfully, we weren't in that part.
And so what was you said you mentioned about your dad that you had some issues with him? He is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
What do you remember? What else do you remember about your dad?
So, from what I remember, he was just an angry man, very angry man. I think from what I came to conclusion is that he was just upset with the environment that he was in and he didn't know how to escape it. So I think he went and turned to vices, started drinking and just tried to numb the pain away. And he took it out on my mom, took it out on us as well. So he was just a very angry guy from what I remember.
Did you have you had contact with him throughout your life, or was it just when you were a kid?
It was just when I was a kid. I remember the missionary actually coming to visit us from Guatemala. She came to visit us in South Bend and told us that our dad was asking about us, and that was the last time we heard from him.
Do you have you at all felt compelled ever to speak to him again, or have you made up your mind about it?
Well, I did forgive him because I held a lot of anger as well for a long time, and then finally I just forget gave him for doing what he did with just beating my mom up and hurting us as well. Um, and I think that was just a huge relief off me, and I was able to just be more at peace. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I had an opportunity to go to Guatemala this past March,
Mhm.
and I didn't take it. I was just too nervous about not knowing the language and not being
Sure.
able to speak to the people. So I backed out last minute.
And well, I understand too. There's got to be some sort of feeling of like, I don't know, fear of not necessarily the language barrier, but also that like going back somewhere where maybe as a kid you thought was not a good place to go back to. Is that
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yep. That was part of it too, as well. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but I was going to go with a group that was going to be working at a school as well. Not near the area that I grew up in, but not exactly there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so then, what was your mom like?
So my mom was the protector from what I remember. She was a caretaker. I remember she would uh, make us peanut butter sandwiches that I remember like her just feeding us peanut butter sandwiches and us giving us she would give us change to go like just quarters or coins to go get goat milk from the farmer that come across the street. But just those little memories that I remember. She was just someone that was caretaking over us. She was loving towards us.
What do you think? What do you think was? What did you learn from your mom? If you could take away some lessons from her personality and your interactions with her, what would you say were the most impactful things your mom taught you?
I would say from what my mom taught me was that no matter the situation that you're in, you just have to do the best that you can. Um, you're sometimes you're not dealt the best cards, but you have to make the most of it. I think that's the biggest lesson.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. Oh, you have a brother too, right?
Yeah. I got three other brothers that are biological,
Mhm.
and then two other brothers that have come from my adopted parents,
Yeah.
and then they have two of their own kids as well. So
Oh,
there's a lot of
you have
us.
a lot. You have a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a
siblings.
lot.
Okay, cool. So how many of them did you grow up with and that you know well?
So I grew up with five of my brothers and two sisters. So we all just grew up pretty close.
Okay, so you all grew up.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
what do you remember about that? Were there are there relationships still with them, or are there some that you lost in contact with, or how's that?
We're still in contact. They're only like a couple hours away. We
Oh,
don't see them
sweet.
as much. Yeah, we don't see them as much, but just because of family and stuff. But
Mhm.
we are still pretty close. We do visit. When we do visit, we are pretty yeah, pretty close.
What order are you in? Are you the youngest, the middle child, the oldest?
I'm the second youngest.
You're the
Second
second
youngest.
youngest. All right,
Yep.
me too. We have that in common.
Yep.
What are the age gaps?
Oh, it's like 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, 2 to 3
Okay.
years. It's yeah.
What do you think? What was your relationship with them growing up?
So my little brother Danny, he was more of the baby. So
Right.
you kind of protect him and just make sure he's taken care of. And then my older brother that's above me, him and I always butted heads, always got in fights, always
Yep. Yep.
didn't agree with things. And then my oldest brother who has cerebral palsy, he was the one that we just loved him just because
Yeah.
he's gone through a lot of adversity as well at a very young age too.
Mm.
But he was the oldest one, but looked the youngest as well.
So with cerebral palsy, how did that become, how did it get diagnosed? Like you guys had to have gone through quite a bit of testing, no?
Yeah. Well, I think from the story of the missionary, well, this is what happened. My mom told this to the missionary. So this is what she said is that my mom was pregnant with my brother, and my dad ended up beating my mom while she was pregnant. And then my brother came out handicapped like that. So
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, he there was a memory with him that was traumatic for me that I saw as a young kid. So I
So you
remember
witnessed that then?
well, that was when she was pregnant. What I witnessed,
Okay.
um this one memory was more of like a nightmare. I thought it was a nightmare for a long time, but
Really?
I realized talking with him later on that it was actually a reality. It was a reality with what happened with him. And yeah, I can share that if you want me to.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, what?
No, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I processed through it as well. But
Oh, good. I'm really glad. First of all, to hear.
yeah,
Yes, I'm glad
yeah,
you did that.
because I remember us talking about how we had to like take ourselves back to our childhood.
Mhm.
And I remember that I was meditating at one point and just had my eyes closed and just was trying to understand why I had so much anger within myself. And I remember that it was from that memory that caused so much chaoticness in my life, because I had no control. I had no control of that situation. So I remember there was just a lot of chaos, a lot of screaming. My brother Matt, who had cerebral palsy, he was on the toilet and he couldn't wipe himself. Like he couldn't wipe himself on his own. So it was either one of us wiping him down, and then I remember my dad was just in there screaming and yelling, and then all of a sudden I saw my dad rushing into the bathroom and picking my brother up from the toilet and launching him against the bathroom tub, and he just fell off the bathroom tub and just poop smeared all over the bathroom tub. And I was just like 3 years old, maybe.
Do you remember what the thought process was for you? Like what it was you were feeling?
I felt rage, a
Mm.
lot of rage. And it's still hard for me to talk about because when I start speaking about it, I start to feel that intensity within myself. And and I think that was the reason why I had so much anger. I didn't have control of this. So that's how what I realized through that traumatic event is that whenever I lose control in my adult life is when I start becoming angry.
Mhm.
So
Is it fair to say that there was a fear present at some point?
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was so young, I didn't understand that situation. I don't know why someone that loved us would harm us like
Mhm.
that
I
and
think
cause so
like
much pain.
with rage, and I can when you say something like that, I remember feeling the loss of control turned into rage for me specifically
Hmm.
because of it's like a it's a mask. It was a mask for the fear that I felt, because
Yeah.
rage anger does feel like a way of getting control back, of
Right.
like if I get angry enough about it, and I can be like, make this into, let's say for example, a battle internal battle cry, then I can use that as power to take back
Mm,
control. And so
yeah.
that's what it was for me. I don't know if that's what is. Do you feel like that's something that it was like for you when it turned into rage? Was like, I want to, like, I am angry at this person because they how could they hurt a family member like that?
Yeah.
And if I could do something, this is what I would do. Did it feel something like that for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I get into that anger, Um, I just want to hurt. I want to hurt
Mm,
people.
yep.
I want to hurt people because, like I said, I learned violence at a very young age from seeing it from my dad.
Right.
So it's in me to know how to hurt people. You know, like because you get instilled that situation at a very young age, and it's just in you at a very young age.
Well, there's like, and also like for me as a kid, I was very protective of my mom, right? And so
Mhm.
when I was like instinctively protective of her, where I would feel something where if she was hurt or if she was getting yelled at, like I would
Mhm.
instinctively want to, I would get upset because I'd be like wanting to protect her. And so I'm sure when you witness stuff like that happen, it brought out that inner,
Yeah.
like the violence. I think a lot of times is the inner will to want to control the situation rather than
Yep.
let it control you. Because
Exactly.
of the fear, right? Of the fear of loss of control, which is what I felt as a kid.
Right.
And
Right.
so the way that I would want to take it back is, as a teenager, you start getting stronger, you start being able to handle yourself physically. And so
Mhm.
that's where a lot of times it transitions, and where it transitioned to me, where I was an angry teenager.
Yeah.
um, I wanted to get back what was taken from me. So, what was that experience like for you growing up after that specific situation and into your teenage years?
So, I would get in fights in elementary school.
Mm,
I kicked someone in the face because they wouldn't stop picking on me. So, like, I
mm,
remember just out playing in the playground and he was just messing with me. I remember tackling him down and just kick him in the face, and I took off. And then I got another fight with someone else there. Or I guess I got another fight in elementary as well. And then middle school, I got another fight. So yeah, I just kept fighting throughout my whole entire life, pretty much. In high
yeah.
school, I was in the wrestling team, and then I don't know if I got in fights there, but uh, no, it was just elementary and middle school was when I got fights.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then, where was there ever a reality check for you where it's like, maybe I'm not doing something right, maybe I could be doing something better? Was there ever a time where I was like, oh, maybe that's not the best way to approach things?
hmm Well, there was two incidents in my life that really changed. It just really opened my eyes up. And one incident was we didn't talk about this, but I went to jail for.
Okay.
Did we talk about this?
I don't think so.
No, I went to jail for a month on spring break because I was just drunk. And I
Yeah.
remember I was trying to fight these cops. I didn't know they were cops, but
Uh,
at that point I was just gone. And I ended up getting arrested and spending a whole month out in Daytona, Florida. And I had a lot of time to think over my life and what I was doing with my life um because I was sitting there. I almost lost my benefits.
yeah.
Yeah, I had to withdraw from yeah.
And what timeline is this? I'm sorry, I want to just get that straight.
So this was in 2013
Okay.
is when I got arrested and sat in jail in March.
And this
March
was
of 2000.
and this is when you're already in, were you not yet in the Marine Corps, or
I was out of the
I
Marines.
was out of the Marine Corps?
I was in
I got you.
college. Yep.
I got you.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So then, okay, so that happens after college or during
Yep.
college. Okay. So then at that point you go, yeah, maybe it's time I start thinking about
Yeah.
things. And before we get to that part, because we did skip a little bit ahead, I did want to
Yep.
ask you, what was it that made you even want to enlist in the Marine Corps?
So number one, I didn't want to go to college. I hated school. I
Yeah.
thought it was stupid and boring. But I also realized that, my brother was going in, actually was in when I was wanting to go in, and he told me that he enjoyed it and that he was traveling all over the world.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, maybe I can go to the Marines and do the same thing. And I chose the baddest branch because those are,
Yeah. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
you know what I mean? Those are the baddest branch.
Right. Right.
So I went that route because I just wanted to test myself as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then so did your brother introduce you to your recruiter, or did you end up just going on your own? How did that happen?
I went in on my own. I had to
Okay.
go figure out how to do all that.
Okay. And so then when you went in, did you already know you wanted to do it, or were you just still like, maybe I'll check it out?
I think for me, it was just I signed up and I just decided just to go. I had no idea what was gonna happen, but I was just gonna go for it.
What year was this? Because was this before YouTube took off?
Oh yeah, this was 2010.
Yep. So then, did you do any research at all? Because when I went to boot camp, and by the way, whoever's watching that is thinking about going to boot camp and maybe they want to go, you can do all the research you want. It's not going to prepare you for it. So, but anyway, did you do any research at all?
Nope.
I think
Not
that's
at
the
all.
best way. I think, to be honest with you, like it is the best way to go about it that way, because
Yeah.
that way you're not anticipating like, this is what are we gonna do here? Like, oh, this is the scary part. Because what I did is I psyched myself out in a couple of events, like Black Friday, like when you meet your
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I know what this is, and so I started like getting nervous, and so it made me mess up more because I was anticipating it. And so if you don't know what's going to happen, you're just kind of sitting there going with the flow, which I believe is the best way to go about it anyway, because at that, like, you just if you live by going with the flow, it's a lot easier to process than to think about, oh, we have to do this thing next, and then we have to do this thing next.
Yep.
It's very easy. So for you, no research, went straight into boot camp, said, let's do it. What was your experience like when you first got there?
Oh my gosh. I was freaking out when we were in the bus, heads down, between our lap, and the drills started coming in screaming at us, and then we all just got to the yellow footprints, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just was following the crowd, and then all of a sudden, as we were lining up to go to the receiving area, I wasn't speaking out because I didn't know you were supposed to say yes sir, aye sir.
Yeah.
And the drill instructor saw that, so they came and grabbed me, and they're like, when I say this, you respond with aye sir. And I just started responding, and then they had me there. They pulled me out, and then they had me left my duffel bag for like 10 minutes up and down screaming aye sir. And I was just freaking out, and in my mind, I'm just like, what the hell did I sign up for? I was like, why am I here?
Yeah, everybody has that thought at some point. And it's usually around that time when you get off the bus and you start getting screamed at. And some people have never experienced that in their life. Like, have never been yelled at home. And so to get there and be yelled at, like, a lot of people, it's like traumatizing for people.
Yeah.
And so I remember when we first got there, there was this one kid that actually ran away. Like he was so terrified. He got into the fetal position and started crying. Like, he had never been talked to that way. And so I remember this was receiving drill instructor was like, he's like, your recruiter should be, I should shoot your recruiter in the head forever letting you through my recruit training. And so this kid's just like in the fetal position, just like sobbing. And this is the first day. So I'm thinking like, man, if this is the first day, like what are we going to do for the next 3 months? And so then that night he started getting dressed, and I remember I was it was my first night of Firewatch, so I was just woken up. And so Firewatch, for people who don't know, is essentially what you do is you guard whatever position you're in. So in this case, the squad bay. So there's two positions called the rovers, which are the ones that go up and down the aisles and they check to make sure that recruits are still there, weapons are still there. And then there's the front and back post. And so I believe I was a rover. And so I was getting dressed, and I was getting ready to change over. It was about midnight, and I was already getting dressed, and I hear the front post talking to this one guy who I told he was in a fetal position, and he was talking to him. And I'm not going to say his name out of privacy, but he was talking. The front post was talking to this recruit, and he was telling him like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because he was putting his shoes on. And he was in green on green, like his green shorts and green shirt.
Oh, wow.
And so he was putting his shoes on, and he keeps talking to him. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get back in your rack." And he's not responding. He just keeps putting his shoes on.
Wow.
And so he starts walking up to go to the door, to the front hatch. And so he's like, the front post is like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get back to your rack." And so at that moment, he just like decks him straight across. Hits him right to the chin. And they start scuffling. So he starts like trying to grab on because the front post realizes he's trying to run away. At this point, he gets it. He's trying to run away, and it's all of our first days. Everybody, it's their first day. So he's fighting to grab onto this recruit, like, because he's trying to escape. And he's unfortunately he's a smaller guy. Like the front post, he's a small dude. He wasn't going to be able to hold on to him, and so he ends up like kicking him because we're on the second deck, second
Yeah.
story. So essentially he's trying to make it beeline to the staircase. And so as that front post is realizing he's losing control of him, he kicks him. And so he kicks him down the steps. And so he starts tumbling. And so at this point, you know what we have to do, right? We have to go and knock on the drill instructor's hat because he's asleep. So he's like knocking on it. He's like, drill instructor. And he opens the door. He's like, what? He's like, the recruit, blah, 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 is running away, sir. And he like takes off. He takes off right after him. And so unfortunately, he actually ends up making it over the fence and into the San Diego airport. Did you go West Coast or East Coast?
West Coast, yeah.
Okay, so you know yeah. that the San Diego airport is attached to the depot. Yep. It's just a fence blocking it off. Yep. So he makes it over the fence and gets to the runway of the airport. And so he gets caught by military. Cow. He gets caught by military police there. And so then the military police come and interview the drill instructor because they try to figure out what happened. And so he's getting interviewed, and then keep in mind, I'm doing my front post Firewatch. I'm doing my rover job, and I'm being kind of nosy too, because I'm like, what is happening? So I'm still like moving back and forth and checking all the recruits and stuff, but I'm listening, and I can hear that he's asking him like what happened, if he had, and the drill instructor told him like, I just got woke up, and then this front post was trying to hold on to him, and so they interviewed him, and so it was just a whole thing. Our first night. So
the first night, holy cow.
That was the first night. So for you, right, you get to the depot and you're like, man, these guys are what am I signing up for? So what's it like for you that first day?
Oh, I hardly remember it, but I remember going to the phones and I didn't even dial at all because I was just freaking out. I'm like,
yeah,
heck, I didn't know what I was doing because you had to read that fine print, and I'm just like, I'm pretending pretending that I'm talking.
yeah, and then you just hang out.
Blur. Yeah,
yeah. So some journalists, some people, if you arrived later, which I heard this from other recruits, was when they arrived later, because I arrived late, but we were still on time with all of the rest of the buses. We were just the last bus.
Oh wow. Okay.
But fortunately they didn't really check us to make sure we were calling. But I saw that, or I heard that there were recruits that did they had to make sure they called somebody and that somebody got on the line.
Oh wow.
So if they didn't get a hold of their parents, they're going to call their recruiters, and then so on and so forth. So they had a longer experience with that. For you, it was just
and it was nope. There's no one. I was talking to myself.
Hey, good enough. And then that happens. And so can you take me through your injury and how that played out?
Yeah. So this was a week away from going up to Camp Pendleton to shoot the guns.
Right.
And we were all on the field. We did the obstacle courses at first. And then at the end, we all did a group drill. So we were doing drags and carries throughout the drill. And then at the very last time that I went down the line, I was dragging this one guy that was a lot bigger than me, and my knee I was just dragging him like backwards. I was stepping backwards, and I went to twist, and my knee just gave out, and I just fell straight to the ground, started screaming, and all the drill instructors came over and just started screaming at me because they thought I was just faking the injury, and they started yelling at me to get back up, and I'm like, I can't get up. I'm hurt. I'm down. So finally, they believed me, and they had to bring out a gator, I think is what it was.
Right. And so then they finally believe you, because we all know drill instructors do not believe anything that you say. Yeah. And so they literally will try to force you to stand up by like screaming, get up. Yeah. Get up now. So that's like a thing that we all at some point experience, where it's like they don't believe anything you're saying. And so they have to be like that, because some recruits will try to get out of training, and and I saw that happen where somebody tried to say like, I don't want to do it anymore or whatever, and so they'll make up whatever thing to get hurt. But when you do get hurt, when you actually get hurt, that's where it gets challenging, right? Because they don't believe you. And so once they believe you and they take you to I imagine they sent you to medical, right?
Yeah, so I had to go to medical, and they told me I had to go get checked out for x-rays. And then I got the x-rays, and they told me that I tore my ACL. and that I wasn't going to be able to train any longer. And my heart just dropped because I didn't know what that meant, other than that I was not going forward with the group to Camp Pendleton.
Right. And so at this point, how old are you? You're 18?
No, I was older. I was older for my age. So maybe like, because I didn't go straight from high school. So
Okay.
this was about 19, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I shipped out to boot camp at 19 too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was 18, 19, same thing. But yeah, so then you're still a young adult. So this is the first, I imagine, like the first big milestone you try to take on, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so what so you get told that you're not going to make go forward, and so what is the next step in your mind? What are you trying to do? Like, what is the process go? What is the processing like for you?
So, I thought I went to I went to medical hold, and a lot of people that are in medical hold might just be, I guess, bumped back a week or two, and they're able to go back to training. But so
Right.
I was thinking I was going to just be able to get back into training, but after those results that they told me no, I just had to just sit there and wait for the next step. So I didn't know what that was going to be, other than just, I think someone told me that I had to go to RSVP,
Right.
the next platoon or squad bay.
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with that. I'm only familiar with like RSP, which is like recruit separation platoon, which is, you said that
Yeah.
one. That one is the in between, right? Is that right?
No, I forget what it was called. I forget. It was like, I forget what that one was called, but R is it R? What is it called? What was the?
What I remember, and this I might be wrong because like I don't,
Yeah.
like I hadn't got, I fortunately didn't get injured, injured enough to get sent to medical, but um,
Yeah.
I know that. So we had a recruit in my platoon that got sent to RSP, which is, they have it printed on their shirt.
Yeah.
And so it's recruit separation platoon. And so that's when they've already decided that like you're going to get separated.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a in between. There's like a
Yep.
medical, and so I forget what that's called.
I forget too.
That's a different one. So
Yeah.
so you get sent to that holding one, right?
Yep.
For medical injuries.
For a little bit, yeah, and then
Okay.
I spent most of my time in RSP
Okay. Okay.
with
So
those recruits.
gotcha. And so that, let me tell you something. When I saw that, I genuinely like felt for them, because to see a recruit that I was with in my platoon and I see him going past us in another holding separation platoon, I saw how like sad they were.
Yeah.
And like I was like, man, like I feel for them. Like I don't know what that's like. I can't imagine. So
Yeah.
you mentioned to me a story and about how you were treated in the recruit separation platoon. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah, every time we went to chow, like we were wearing the green sweatshirt as well that said
That's
R
right.
RSP,
Yeah.
and from what the drill instructors know out there is that you're a quitter.
Mhm.
So they would come and pick on you and be like, you're quitting, you're going home, you're gonna go home to mama, uh and then it just started messing with you because of just that negativity that they would holler at you. So I it just made me sad as well too, because I was just bummed out that I didn't make it. I know I could have made it, but that was my situation.
And you weren't quitting either, right? And so that was
No, no.
the hard part, was like you did not decide I don't want to do this, and so you
Right.
were treated as though you were, um,
Yeah.
and and that had to have. Do you think that it brought back that feeling that you had as a kid of like loss of control?
No, I think it just brought back more of facing an obstacle and facing adversity, facing failure
Mm,
is what it brought back. Like
right.
I'm a failure.
Mm. And so what was the emotions like for you? Were like at some point, I'm sure they told you like you're gonna get sent home, right?
They told me they were gonna send us home, but we didn't know when.
Right. So you were just there until whenever.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there for 8 months.
That's a long time to wait.
Yeah.
And so then when you get sent home, what do you do when you get, first thing you do when you get back?
So I wasn't living with my parents, so I ended up staying with my friends' parents, and I just went crazy. Went partying and drinking, and actually had a friend that was in RSVP that came out of it at the same time as well, and we linked up, and I hung out with him in Illinois, in Chicago,
Oh, okay.
and hung out with him for a little bit out there, and just was drinking and partying as well out there right
And
after.
what do you remember about those years? Because you did mention, we'll hit that like you mentioned the story of you got arrested. What led up to that?
I think was lack of purpose, but I also had addiction to alcohol, and that
Right.
stemmed from my father. Uh, so it was an addiction that I didn't know how to break. All I knew is that I loved to drink and I loved to feel like I was free, and I was more loose, I guess, with just how I was as a person. So that caught me up in, going to bars, drinking, and just regretting a lot of things.
It was it. Would you say that you used that to numb what you were feeling?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was.
And so then, at what point do you realize this is a problem? You said was it during the arrest or
It
after?
was it was actually an incident before the arrest.
Okay.
And this is more on the faith topic, because there's one night I came home from the bar, and I was drunk and just treat my little brother, because my little brother and I were living together, and he was home. I came drunk and I was just being a jerk towards him, and he looked at me in my face and is like, "You're being like dad, my biological
Mhm.
dad."
Wow.
And I started bawling my eyes. And I remember he went to bed and I was still drinking after that. And
Yeah.
I remember on the ground on my knees and just drunk and praying to God. I was like, God, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And 2 weeks later, from that incident, I was in jail.
So wow. So then you were already starting to think about it, and when you got there, you literally were given the time you asked for. Really,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
think about it,
it
because
was.
you were asking, please, like, help me, and so you got you got your wish,
You
right?
got it.
And so
Yep.
you sat down and had time to think about it and process what it is where you were in your life. And so, what happens after that? What do you do immediately after you make that realization?
So, you mean like when I was in jail, or?
Yeah, after you get done with all that.
I guess when I got out, it was just a whole new perspective. Like, you lose your freedom. This was everything you take for granted out in the world, civilian world. You don't have anything like that in jail. You lose the freedom to be outside, the freedom just to use the bathroom on your own. You don't have the freedom to listen to music. All these little things we take for granted, you lose when you're in jail.
And so, did you end up for the drinking? What did you end up doing? Did you just quit cold turkey? How did you go about doing that?
This is where I like I said, I had an addiction.
Mm.
So even after I got out, didn't drink for a little bit, but I stopped drinking for a little bit, but then I picked it back up.
Okay,
I picked it back up even after that situation.
okay. And so then, what happened there?
So yeah, I remember it was just on the 4th of July. I don't know what year this was, but it was 4th of July, maybe 2014. I was day drinking again, went to a party. And I remember just getting wasted, and then I think that day with everything that happened the next morning, I woke up with the keys in my ignition, and I was just hanging out in the truck the next morning after
Wow.
4th of July, just knocked out. And I'm just like, what the heck? But I didn't stop. That day I had another event that night, and I got downtown Indianapolis to just go to like a event, and was still drinking. And I remember that night I also like bumped into a car, and the cops had to come out that night. So I remember I was just freaking out, throwing mints in my mouth because the cops came out, because I was still buzzed up throughout just
Yeah.
the whole day. And the next day, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I have to walk away, because I acted a fool, because I also had an ex at that time that I met down there, and just acted a fool. And I think that whole day was just like, I'm done. I walked away for good, for good.
And so that was the last time that you like drank, or like did you after that kind of become more controlling or have control of it?
I think I become more control of it.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so what is your relationship like with alcohol today?
I hardly drink.
Mhm.
Maybe once every 3 months.
Okay. I mean,
But
the main important thing and what I care about, especially because like the idea is obviously is I'd like to I'd like to check in with you regularly.
yeah,
That's my goal. And so
yeah,
I the most thing that I care about is that I just want to make sure that like uh, you're okay now, right?
yeah, oh yeah,
Okay,
definitely,
perfect.
definitely.
Awesome. I'm really glad that you were able to do that. And so then, can you talk to me about what it is that after that happened? Did you change careers? Because I remember you mentioned something about you were doing being a personal trainer, and then
Yeah.
you made a change. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so after I graduated college, I started personal training and I really loved it. I really enjoyed helping people become better. And I wasn't really drinking that at that time as well. But once the gym shut down in 2020 because of the pandemic, and I was recently getting married, I had to transition into a full-time job, which I've been with Amazon for the
Yeah.
past almost 5 years.
Okay.
And I had a transition because of just it wasn't the thing I enjoyed wasn't providing for the family.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what did you end up transitioning to?
So I just like I said, been working with Amazon for the past 5 years, but now I'm really working on trying to figure out long-term career, which is what I'm currently working on right now, which is getting into a firefighting academy.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
firefighter is a great career, man. I'm glad that
yeah.
you chose that. And what made you choose firefighter?
I was seeking purpose. I was seeking purpose. So I know that they serve the community, they help people in need, and they're just it's a purposeful job.
Yeah, no, I 100% I think that's a great idea for you.
Mhm.
And plus you got the build for it. You work out a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And so what do you think about, can you talk about where your love for weightlifting came and training?
Yep. Yeah. So I think it was honestly something God had gifted or given me is because it was an outlet at a very young age. I was doing push-ups and sit-ups back in elementary school. And
Right,
then also in middle school, started lifting weights. And then in college or in high school, just continued that whole journey of just working out and lifting. But it's mostly just like a therapy for me throughout my whole life.
right. Yeah, no, and for me too, like exercising has always been an outlet
Yeah.
where I've been able to I used to run a lot, like a
Yeah.
ridiculous amount. When I was in the Marine Corps, like most of my Marine Corps career, I ran almost every night. And what I liked about it was that I was able to, I don't know, like everything goes away, and
Right.
it's just whatever it is you want to solve is just you, and
Yep.
you're able. I was able to think about it, and I was able to process a lot of heavy things when I was
Mhm.
running. Like it was crazy. Like I wasn't there. Like when I was running, I'm not where I'm physically at. I'm somewhere else in my head.
Yep.
In my head, I'm running and I'm thinking about like what it is that I have in front of me. What do I have to,
Mhm.
what is it, the stressors in my life right now that are keeping me from being where I want to be? And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of back and forth in my head when I'm running. And so that's why it was therapeutic for me. And so
Yep.
I eventually I had to balance things out because I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but for me, as I've been getting older, if I don't weight train, my it's almost like my ligaments start to get weaker too, and so running starts to put more stress on my body physically, and so
Yeah.
that started happening, and that I remember I went through a phase where I was pretty sad because I was like, I this was my outlet, and now I don't have it, so what am I going to do
Yeah.
now? And so this was before therapy and everything, so weightlifting really helped me out too because it was I felt stronger. I was able to return to running because I started weightlifting,
Yeah.
and and this was from talking with physical therapists and asking them, what do you do with stuff like that? And that's what they do is
Yep.
they do resistance training and then slowly put weights on it. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So then I did that and I got healthy again and started to be able to run. And so I remember how important it was for me, right? And so I can completely understand, especially if you
Yep.
stayed fit. I'm sure this is part of your mental health, right?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And so, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say like how it's just a way to channel out that anger.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because like, there's
Yep.
no that energy has to go somewhere. Like you have
Right.
it built up in your body, like it has
It's
to
in
go somewhere.
here.
Yes, exactly. And so it's been for me, it was very helpful. But I do think too that therapy was something that helped me figure out why I was like that, and
Yeah.
and where weightlifting helped me release it. If that makes sense.
Right. Yep.
And so to balance the two was actually kind of like the solution for me there. And so I did want to ask you, you're a dad now, right?
Yep. Yep.
So what has that been like for you? And has it changed anything about your view, your perspective on parents and being a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was my son when he was born was when I was revealed that I had trauma that I had to deal with, which was the anger. Because whenever he would cry as an infant, I would just start losing the control and the anger would come up. And another situation where I was praying to God, I was like, God, what is going on here? Why am I feeling this rage? Why do I want to harm my son? And I had to pray over this because like I felt it within my bones and everything. And it was my son that revealed that trauma. And I've been able to work through it. And I've seen the growth, I've seen the patience, I've been able to give my son more grace because he's just a kid. So it was a hard season when he was here, when he was young,
Yeah.
and I been able to work through it.
You know what I think is, and this is just my thought process, and correct me if I'm wrong. And so I think that that has a lot to do with the feeling of when your child cries and you can't understand why. And I imagine that would have something to do with like a feeling of losing control, right?
Oh yeah. Yep, that's exactly what it was.
And so like not knowing like how to stop your child from crying can be pretty like, I don't know, debilitating in some sort of aspect.
Yeah.
And so what is it that you realize, okay, something's going on here, right? Like
Mhm.
I should not feel that way. And so what made you did you seek out help? How did you deal with it?
It was through meditation. I
Mm,
I I I took myself back to that very young age, to that memory that I had, and I had to process and talk to my younger self and speak to him that everything is okay.
mm,
This isn't your fault. You have no control over the situation that's happening. You have to
right.
let it go. And I remember in my meditation, I wrapped my arms around myself, my younger self, and just gave him a hug. And
Mm,
I just told him to come home with me. And that was just a huge release because we don't know how to process our trauma at that young of an age. We
right.
don't know how to deal with that.
Of course.
So now that we're older, we know how to process things better, so that now we have to take ourselves back to those traumatic events so that we can, I guess, unravel that pain and that trauma.
Can you talk to me about meditation and what's your process? How did you find it?
Um, I started meditating maybe when my son was born.
Ah,
So
right.
3 years ago. And it was mostly I started with just stretching and rolling out. And then all of a sudden I just decided to just lay there and close my eyes and allow my thoughts to just allow my thoughts just come through and just allow God to speak to me as well. And I think he revealed to me what was going on throughout just me being still and being quiet.
Mm. And so the reason why I ask you about this is because I myself have had certain experiences, and so I am still investigating and I'm still doing kind of like research and talking to people about this because I myself have gone through some experiences that have kind of made me start to think about like a more of a spiritual, in a more of a spiritual way. And I was
Mhm.
raised Catholic. Okay. So
Yeah.
I did my first communion. I used to go to church on Sundays. And so that was something that I used to do. But for me, I felt like there was a fear that I remember feeling with religion where I
Mhm.
was like, as a kid, I was like, I remember being afraid of it, of doing something wrong, of making mistakes, of just not being the perfect child. And so I remember being afraid of all of that. And
Mhm.
so I had some experiences growing up when I was uh, some experiences that at some point I started thinking about, sometimes coincidences should be pretty much impossible if we're talking about like how infinite the universe is supposed to be, and
Yeah.
how numerically it should be an impossibility for coincidences to just be. And that's just my thought process. Maybe I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but I think about like it should be pretty difficult to have like uh unlikely, I should say, is the better word, to have coincidences, a ton of them anyway. And throughout my life, when I look back, I find patterns, and some of it I can compare to with patterns of behavior, right? And so maybe certain patterns of behavior will make you more likely to make certain decisions. But
Mhm.
what it doesn't explain to me is the people that walked into my life and at the time that they did, because
Mhm.
I learned certain lessons, like for example, through a breakup. I learned a certain lesson that I don't think I would have learned had I not gone through that difficult situation. And
Yeah.
it happens in different ways for people. But I've heard this a lot where it's this something happens where you're like, okay, what is going on? Like I am not there's some pain I'm not dealing with. There's something, but these same people keep walking into my life. And so that's when I started
Mm.
turning to, do we have, is there something else going on outside of our control? Is there something that, are we here to learn certain lessons? Right.
Yeah.
And so from your perspective, what do you think about all that stuff? What do you think happens in life, and how it is that we come to these kind of visualizations?
Well, like I said, I feel like we don't have control
Hmm.
because as you see with my life, like how in the world did I end up here?
Yeah.
Why did God choose me and my brothers to have freedom? So it's just you can't understand it, but that's pretty much a story of God giving us that grace through his son. And I I just know with everything that has happened in my life that someone's writing the story. Someone has control of my life.
And so I'm going to throw this perspective at you, and you tell me what you think.
Yeah,
I'm learning myself, so
right.
um, I, I've listened to some stories, like a lot of near death experiences, and so for me, like it's the spiritual conversation had always been difficult for me because I am a very logical person, and
Mhm.
so I want proof. And so the thing is, at some point, if enough people have these experiences, I've listened to tons of stories of people who have died and come back, and so there seems to be like a connection of that we are all connected in some way,
Yeah.
and that we all come from the same source. Some people call it God, some people call it source. And so I've listened to a lot of stories, and to my experience, I have never, or to my knowledge, I don't think I've ever died. My mom told me that when I was born, I stopped breathing, but I have no recollection of that. And so I hear about all these stories about near death experiences and people coming back and having these very similar but unique experiences, like similar in that they go through this review of their life.
Trials, yeah.
Yeah, they go through this review and they find out that actually, because we're all connected and we all come from the same source, we actually have some form of control of our stories. Of like we write the main plots, but there is free will, and so
Mhm.
that we can choose to make the right decision and we can choose to not. And so that's the part of like the soul's journey, and
Yeah.
that's what I've been hearing. And I hear a lot of people say, God is the person that decides it. And so I'm still in that phase of, do you think that that's where it comes from? Like, do you feel like we are part of God, or do you feel like God is a separate entity?
I feel like God lives within us. He lives within us, so he's part of us.
Mhm.
And he gives us his spirit, which is Jesus, to live in the Holy Spirit, which is Jesus, that lives inside of us, so that we can experience who God is.
Mm.
So, uh, so yeah, I think that he's everywhere. He's everywhere,
Mhm.
and in us, controlling the world. He's just was it omnipresent is what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, I do feel like when I hear about, I used to think that science and, let's say, spirituality was separate, but the more that I think about it, you start having, what do you call them, quantum physicists or something,
Hmm.
and they kind of are the link between spirituality and science. I do feel like we just don't have the measurements to be able to quantify, like, how massive the
Hmm.
spiritual side is. And
Yeah.
so I do feel like, the more stories I hear about people who have had these experiences, they make more sense than,
Yeah.
like, for me, it's just like, it can't be that we exist here and we're just like the only ones that happen to make it. And so science tells us that we are part of the universe, right? Like, science will agree with you that we are made up of the same atoms and the same
Hmm.
molecules that the universe is made of. And so if that's the case, right? If that's the case, then how is it that we aren't consciousness, like, not human consciousness, but consciousness is not infinite also? It's made of the universe made
Hmm.
it. So I do feel like science will catch up at some point, to spirituality. And I do feel like, I don't feel like this is, at one point, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have told you, I think that when we close our eyes and for the last time, like, that's it. We're
Hmm.
just done. But the more stories that I hear and how alike they are in certain ways, I I'm starting to ask myself, maybe there is more. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. So the reason why I believe in God and believe in the Christian specifically faith
Sure.
is because of the name of Jesus. That's the only name that has been able to give me that peace. That's the only
Sure.
name that has been able to break the addictions, because
Mm,
I was not able to break the addictions on my own, because as you heard, me drinking after I got arrested, or me just continuing that addiction, I couldn't have done it myself.
mhm,
So not only has he helped me get rid of the addiction, but he gives me that peace so that I
mhm.
don't allow that anger to harm anyone.
Right.
So that's how I know that the name of Jesus is the name that releases me from that pain and that anger.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I do feel like, when I heard that story about that, you said that you asked, you prayed for, like, an opportunity to get
Be
better,
really, yeah,
and yeah, and to release all of that, and it was put in front of you. And so I just don't think that those things are coincidences, if that
right,
makes
yeah,
sense. Like, for you to ask for something, and this is where maybe you see it more Christian side, and maybe I see it more like, I feel like spirituality is a little bit different, or is a little separate from. I think
yeah,
it is a part of religion, but I feel like religion itself is its own category, and I do feel like it can be a path to connection to spirituality. But as I see it now, I do think that spirituality is its own, and its own,
hmm,
like, its own entity. And so I do think, or
yeah,
its own world, I should say.
hmm,
And so I do think that, when you request things, some people call it. Have you heard of, what's the term? When you wish things into reality, I forget the actual term. There's a
manifest,
manifest. Yeah,
yeah,
when
yeah,
you and so I believe a lot in manifestation, because
hmm,
I do think that when you send out intentions into the ether, if you will,
yeah,
that something responds to you. And so I do think that, like, when you pray, or when you do say in your mind, like, I want this thing, you put that intention. You can say that God answers you, or maybe you call it the universe answering you. Whatever
yeah,
terminology you use to address that, there's something else that's hearing you. I do
Yeah.
think that happens, and that gets put in front of you because you can literally just ask for it.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, we're having a conversation right now, which I manifested this a long time ago. I wrote this down in my notebook that I wanted to share my story more,
Okay.
and that is what I want in my life, is to share my story. That's my purpose. My purpose is to share my story, because it's a story of redemption, adversity, just perseverance, and um, just faith. And I think God has given me this story to share.
Yeah, and this interesting that you say that, because again, same thing. I've manifested these conversations where I've said it in my
Right,
head, like I want to talk to people and I want to hear them out and I want to hear their stories. And
right.
so I think that the same way that you said about that, you telling your story, like you want to help people. And so for
Mhm.
me, I want to have an outlet for people to tell their stories. That makes
Right.
sense. So it's so interesting that you and I are having. We both wished our own side of things, and we just we got linked
Link
together.
up.
So I just feel like there's something there to that.
Right.
It just can't be like.
Like I said, this is I feel like this had been written out already.
Yeah.
The the fact that my kids and wife are out of the house, they're at parade right now for the next hour and a half, 2 hours.
Mhm.
It gives us this time.
Yeah,
So it's just crazy. It's like incidents like that.
it's hard to say that, like, what's the likelihood that in an infinite amount of possibilities that could happen, that stuff like that happens and it lines up the way it does. It's just like it's very very it's very hard to argue in terms of, like, if you're looking at it from a scientific perspective of, like,
Mhm.
yes, certain things can be that it's pattern of behaviors that, like, for example, that you grew up and so but it doesn't explain the people that appear in your life because you don't control them.
Mhm.
The people
Yeah.
that just show up into your life and teach you certain things, that's very hard for me to dispute and say scientifically, like, oh, well, it's because your behavior. But that they didn't know you.
Right. Yeah.
They had no way of
Yeah.
being in your life like that. So when stuff like that happens, I'm open to that idea because it's just science can't answer that for me well enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we are coming up on our hour, and so I want to just, I think this is a good point to, you talked about purpose. Talk a little bit about purpose and
Yeah.
what do you feel your purpose is now? You said sharing your story, but can you
I
elaborate on that?
feel I feel like my purpose has been my greatest pain,
Mm.
which I've heard this before, is that our purpose is our greatest pain, which
Yes.
being an abusive home, having a terrible father, biological father, um, I now have the opportunity to do things right, to change my lineage and to change the next generation for my son and my daughter, that they don't have to grow up with a alcoholic dad. So I'm changing my lineage. My purpose is to share and give the knowledge to other dads that you have to work through your mess, you have to work through the trauma, the pain, so that you can be the best dad that you can for the kids. Because if we can change the household, if we change the family home, we change our communities, we change the world.
Yeah, I love your perspective, man. To be
Yeah.
honest, that's what I'm here for too. Is to
Right.
I had some a rough upbringing too, and had to deal with issues with my dad. I forgave my dad, and had issues with not just both my mom and my dad, and so there's been a lot of healing for me and realizing, like, I want
Mhm.
to do it different, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that we're in it's great that I get to talk to you and that I get to meet other people that are like-minded. And so I think we can do it together, man. I feel like
Right.
that's something that we do as a unit, and we find other people like-minded and we do that to help others because we don't want what for other people to experience what we
Yeah.
experienced. So
Like
so
you said, it was we're all connected.
I believe we
We're
are.
all trying to make this world better. I think each of us have our own gifts, and we're
Yes.
all meant to make the world better.
And I believe that we're unique in that way, that only we can
Right.
do that change, that specific change. And so whether you believe it scientifically, whether you believe that there is nothing after this and you believe that everything is just this, and that's perfectly okay, and I respect that. But we are still connected in that we're all humans, and so maybe you don't believe in spirituality, or you don't believe in religion, and that's perfectly okay. We are all at least our fellow humans, and that's something that is worth working towards. And so I really appreciate that you had this conversation with me. And if there are any ways where we can find you, where people can follow you and support you?
Yeah, definitely go on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at Stronghold Father.
Awesome. Well, Tim, I really appreciate your time. And I know this is only the beginning of more conversations in the future. And I'm very excited to see where you go.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. And I know that you're doing big things as well. So
Hey,
thank you.
I appreciate it, man.